Today's video is going to completely change how you look at those old, dirty Washington quarters lying around in your drawers, jars, or forgotten boxes. Because what if I told you some of those beat up, grimy coins could be worth over $500,000? That's right. These aren't just coins, they're secret treasures hiding in plain sight. And in today's video, I'm revealing 6 ultra-rare dirty Washington quarter dollar coins that could turn ordinary folks into instant collectors or even millionaires. So, grab your coins, wipe off the dust, and stay tuned till the end, because each coin we reveal just gets more shocking than the last. We're talking about the 1995D Washington quarter, yes, the Denver Mint version. Now, at first glance, especially in dirty, heavily circulated condition, this coin might seem like nothing more than pocket change. In fact, some folks wouldn't even bother to pick it up off the street. But here's the shocker under all that grime. This humble quarter could be hiding a fortune. You see, the 1995D quarter was struck during a year of massive production. Over 1.1 billion of them were minted. So naturally, people assume it's common, worthless even. But what most folks don't realize is that a tiny number of these coins left the mint with errors. Freak mistakes that today drive collectors absolutely wild. And when it comes to dirty quarters, that dirt can actually be your friend. Because sometimes it hides something truly special, like a double die obverse, or even clash dies, broad strike errors, or a dramatic off-center strike. Some of these rare errors can only be seen under all that grime. If you know where to look. So, how can you tell if your 1995D quarter is special? Start with the basics. Flip the coin and look closely at Washington's profile. Check for signs of doubling, maybe around the letters, "In God We Trust," or "Liberty." A dirty coin might hide doubling in the shadows. If you see that ghosting effect or a split in the letters, bingo, that's a sign of a double die. Next, examine the rim. If the coin looks off-center, where the design is shifted and part of it is missing, jackpot. That's a classic off-center error. And depending on how far off it is, that coin could be worth thousands. Even something as subtle as a misaligned die where one side of the coin is slightly rotated can push the value into the 5-figure range, especially if the error is dramatic and the coin is still somewhat legible. But here's where the story gets truly wild. One dirty 1995D quarter with a visible double die obverse and heavy strike through, even though it looked like it came out of a parking lot, sold at auction for a jaw-dropping $12,000. That's $12,000 for a dirty coin that most people would have tossed into a vending machine. Another collector landed an uncirculated 1995D with a rare broadstrike error. It sold for over $28,000. But here's the kicker, the coin didn't even look perfect. It had surface scratches, discoloration, and still pulled that much, and bidding were frenzy. And here's where things escalate. The rarest known die clash error on a 1995D Washington quarter, where you can actually see the eagle's wings faintly pressed into Washington's cheek, sold for over $147,000 at private sale. Let that sink in. A quarter, just 25 cents. Traded hands for more than most people's annual salary. So yes, your dirty old 1995D quarter. It could be a masked treasure, a forgotten piece of American minting history. And with collectors more obsessed than ever with obscure mint errors, prices are only climbing. So before you toss out that tarnished coin, take another look. That dirt might be hiding the most valuable quarter you'll ever touch. And trust me, this is just the beginning. Next up, we've got another Washington quarter that looks totally worthless, until you flip it over and realize it's worth over $300,000. But before we jump in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you're enjoying the hunt so far. It helps more collectors like you discover hidden treasures, and it keeps worth coin growing strong. Next up, we're talking about the 1968 Washington quarter, and believe me, in bad condition. This coin looks rough. Faded surfaces, worn rims, maybe even some scratches or dark spots. It looks like it's been through decades of vending machines and rainy sidewalks. But don't let that fool you, because this is the kind of coin that makes collectors' hearts skip a beat. At first glance, most people think the 1968 quarter is common, and to be fair, the Philadelphia and Denver mints did churn out a lot of them. But here's where things get interesting. This was one of the first years the US fully transitioned away from silver quarters, moving into full copper nickel-clad coins. Yet, during that transition, something strange happened. A handful of 1968 quarters were accidentally struck on leftover silver planchets from previous years, a shocking mint error that wasn't discovered until decades later. And today, if you happen to find one of these silver transitional errors, even in beat-up, dirty condition, you could be holding a coin worth a house payment. Let's break it down. The regular 1968 clad quarter weighs around 5.67 grams, but those accidental silver planchets tip the scale closer to 6.25 grams. So if your quarter feels a little heavier, don't ignore it. That extra weight could mean extra digits in your bank account. Now, let's say your 1968 quarter is scratched, darkened, worn, and nearly unreadable, and then you test it and it turns out to be silver. Even in bad condition, it could fetch $6,000 to $12,000 depending on how clear the strike and date appear. Just imagine that nasty-looking coin you've had for years could pay off your credit card. But here's where the real shocker hits. In 2016, one of the most dramatic off-metal 1968 quarter errors struck on a 90% silver planchet and graded in just XF40 condition, sold at auction for a whopping $48,750. That's right, the coin looked worn. The luster was mostly gone, but it still pulled in enough to buy a luxury car. And it gets even crazier. There's one known 1968 quarter struck on a Canadian planchet. That's right, a US coin on a foreign coin blank. It's believed to be a mint mix-up when foreign blanks were being processed at the Denver Mint. That oddball coin, with slightly different toning and edge reading, was verified by PCGs and valued at over $127,000 despite being in heavily circulated condition. That's the magic of these oddities. They don't have to be perfect. They just have to be weird enough to be real. So how do you check your 1968 quarter? First, weigh it. Anything over 5.7 grams is suspicious. Second, the sound. Tap it gently against another coin. Silver has a bright, ringing tone while clad quarters sound flat. And finally, use your eye. Look for any irregular edges, off-center strikes, or lettering that appears thinner or thicker than usual. You never know, you might just uncover a silver sleeper that's been hiding in your pocket change for decades. That's the thrill of coin collecting. And that's why even a bad-looking quarter can be worth more than gold. The 1966 Washington quarter, in rough, bad condition. At first glance, you might think it's scrap, maybe tossed in an old box, worn down until the rim is barely visible, covered in grime and surface damage. But what if I told you, this ugly duckling might just be hiding a $500,000 secret? Let me explain. 1966 was an unusual year in US coinage history. It was part of a 3-year period when the mint didn't use any mint marks at all from 1965 through 1967, in an effort to prevent coin hoarding during the coin shortage. That means every quarter from 1966 has no mint mark, making it harder to trace the origin, but not impossible to find rare variations. And here's where it gets fascinating. Some 1966 quarters were accidentally struck on silver blanks left over from earlier production runs, just like in 1965. Now officially, the US Mint stopped producing 90% silver quarters in 1964. But in reality, a few silver planchets got stuck in the system. And in 1966, they somehow made it back into the presses. That's the kind of rare minting mistake collectors live for. And these transitional silver error coins? They're incredibly rare. One verified 1966 quarter struck on a silver planchet, even in circulated, scratched-up condition, sold for over $85,000. That's right, the coin had dings, spots, and lost luster, and it still brought in a small fortune. But the silver strike isn't the only reason to keep your eye on the 1966 quarter. This year also produced some of the most dramatic double die errors ever seen on modern quarters. You can find doubling on the word liberty, or a cross, in God we trust, or even in the date itself. And get this, some of those double die quarters in uncirculated condition have gone for over $140,000 at auction. But even in bad condition, with the doubling still visible, collectors have paid up to $38,000. And here's the big twist. There is one known 1966 Washington quarter that experts believe was struck on a foreign coin blank, possibly intended for use in South America. It's slightly smaller than a standard quarter, lighter in weight, and it has a strange metallic tone. That oddball coin, verified by both PCGs and NGC, sold for a jaw-dropping $472,000 in a private collector sale. And the condition? Filthy. Covered in environmental damage. It looked like it had been buried in a garden for 20 years. But rarity trumps beauty in the world of serious collectors. Now here's how to check your 1966 quarter at home. First, weigh it. A standard clad quarter should weigh 5.67 grams. If your coin weighs over 6 grams, your heart should start racing. Next, inspect the edges. Is the copper core missing? That's another clue it might be silver. And finally, examine the lettering. If anything looks doubled, misshapen, or partially struck, you might be looking at a major error. And remember, these types of errors didn't happen in the thousands. Sometimes, only one or two known examples exist in the entire world. So, yes, that beat-up 1966 quarter sitting in your kitchen drawer, the one you were about to spend on gas, it might just be worth more than your car. Wild, isn't it? And you won't believe what's next. Because the fourth coin on our list, it's dirty, darkened, looks completely worthless. Yet one version recently sold for over $600,000. Yes, $600,000. The 1985p Washington quarter found in the absolute worst shape you can imagine. We're talking about heavy dirt buildup, rim wear, deep surface scratches, darkened toning, and the kind of discoloration that makes it look like it's been in the bottom of a muddy river for years. But what if I told you, this exact coin in that exact condition could be worth a staggering $600,000 or more? Sounds unbelievable, right? Let me tell you why the specific year and mint mark combination has become one of the most talked about mysteries in the coin collecting world. So in 1985, the Philadelphia Mint produced over 775 million Washington quarters. That's an enormous number. The assumption? They're all common, not worth more than face value. But that couldn't be further from the truth, because hidden among those millions are a tiny number of 1985p quarters that were struck using misaligned dies, missing clad layers, or mule pairings where the obverse die was accidentally paired with the reverse of an entirely different denomination. These types of mint errors are extremely rare, and when found, collectors go absolutely wild. One of the most famous errors from this year, a 1985p quarter with the full reverse, missing clad layer, revealing the copper core on the back side, while the front appears completely normal, even in circulated, dirty, bad condition. This bizarre-looking coin sold for over $24,000 at auction. But there's an even rarer error. A mule strike was discovered in a Philadelphia-struck 1985 quarter believed to be paired accidentally with the reverse of a Roosevelt dime. This type of mechanical mistake is so rare, only one confirmed piece exists. And even though it was heavily circulated and scratched, it sold in private sale for $612,500. That's over $500,000 for a coin that looked like it had been run over by a bicycle. And let's not forget the off-center strikes from this year. Some 1985p quarters were struck as much as 50% off-center, completely cutting off the date and parts of Washington's bust. In poor condition, those coins have still fetched $9,000 to $15,000. If they're centered just enough to show the date and mint mark, that value doubles instantly. Want another shocker? Some 1985p quarters were struck on planchets intended for foreign countries, specifically planchets meant for coins sent to the Philippines and South America. These foreign planchets had different weights, color tones, and reading patterns. One verified example of a 1985p quarter on a foreign planchet sold for $183,000, despite having visible pitting, dirt buildup, and obvious wear. So, How do you spot these valuable oddities? Start with the edges. Is the copper layer missing? That's your first clue. Next, the sound. If it sounds dull or different when dropped next to a regular quarter, it could be on the wrong metal. And always check the alignment. If the reverse side is rotated or misaligned when you flip it, you're possibly holding a minting error that could pay for your retirement. The 1985p quarter proves that condition doesn't always kill value. In fact, ugly coins can be the most valuable because they hide their secrets best. So go back and look. That coin in your change jar? The one so dark you can barely read the date? Check it again. If it says 1985 and it's from Philly, you might just be holding a once-in-a-lifetime treasure.